Control squinted through the windscreen of the XJS as he pulled into the empty fast lane and accelerated past a lumbering articulated lorry. The sky had been a bloody crimson last night, and when the sun returned in the morning, it had risen into a clear, untrammelled blue sky. There was heat and light in those early rays, and he angled the blind to shade his eyes. The radio was tuned to the Today programme, and the forecaster predicted a week of searing heat. The 7 o'clock news followed the weather. The lead item was the shooting of 2 tourists and a policeman in the French Alps. The victims had been identified, but as yet a motive for the killing had not been found. It was senseless, a French policeman concluded. That, Control thought, was not true. It was far from senseless. The operation had been the result of long and meticulous planning, 6 months spent cultivating the targets and gaining their trust, and then weeks setting up the meeting. The objective had been successfully achieved, but it had not been clean. There were 2 errors that would need careful handling, errors that raised doubts over the performance of the man who had carried out the operation. The fact that it was number 1 was troubling. It had been Control's operation. He knew the targets intimately. Yahya al-Musa had been an atomic research scientist. Samira Najib was an expert in microwave technology. They were married, and until recently, both had been in the employ of the Iraq Atomic Energy Agency. Following the fall of Saddam, they had been recruited by the Iranians, and with their help, the regime had made progress towards its goal of becoming a nuclear power. A decision had been made, somewhere in MI5, that the couple was too dangerous to live. That decision had been rubber-stamped in another anonymous grey office in Whitehall, and their files had been marked with red and passed to Group 15 to be actioned. It was important, and because of that, Control had selected number 1 for the assignment. As he turned the Jaguar off the motorway at the exit for central London, Control reviewed his preparation. The 2 had come to France under the pretext of a long-deserved holiday. The real reason, however, and the reason for their diversion into the Alpine countryside, was to meet an employee of Caesars, a subsidiary of Areva, the global leader in the market for zirconium. That metal was used, among other things, for nuclear fuel cladding. Iran needed zirconium for its reactors, and al-Musa and Najib had been led to believe that their contact could supply as much as they needed. But there had been no employee. There was no zirconium. There was to be no meeting, at least not the rendezvous that they had been expecting. Control tapped out a rhythm on the steering wheel as he passed into London. No, he thought, the preparation had been faultless. The problems were all of Milton's making. The dead gendarme would give the French police a motive to locate the killer. One of their own had been murdered. It would make them more tenacious and less likely to shelve the investigation when the trail went cold, as Control knew that it would. That was bad, but even worse was the boy. A child, orphaned by the killer, cowering in the car as he watched his parents' murders. That was dynamite, the hook upon which the press would be able to hang all of their reporting. It ensured the story would run and run. Control slowed and turned the Jaguar into the underground car park beneath a small building huddled on the north bank of the Thames. It was a 60s build, constructed from brick and concrete without style or grace. 5 floors, anonymous. The car idled as the garage door rolled up with a tired metallic creak. The sign painted onto the door read, "Global Logistics." He drove inside, pulled up next to the secure elevator and got out of the car. The lift arrived, and he embarked, pressing the button for the 3rd floor. The lift eased to a halt, the doors sighed open, and he stepped out into the bustling open-plan space beyond.